This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with TKM Inc. TKM stands for The King's Men. They pride themselves on being hardworking, honest, and dependable. They put an emphasis on serving Christ by serving others.
Their scope of work cover road construction, small dirt work and excavating, heavy hauling in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia.
They can be reached at 931-243-3958, and they are located at 10635 Clay County Highway, Moss, Tennessee, 38575. You can also find more information at benandtravis.com/TKM.
TKM Inc. is also a sponsor of the Boathouse Freedom 5K and Fun Run on July the 10th at Mars Hill Bible School. We would love for you to come run with us in person or do it virtually. You can register at benandtravis.bigcartel.com. That's benandtravis.bigcartel.com. Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. I'm Travis Creasy. This is Ben Hayes, and we're coming to you from a houseboat.
That's right. We've been struggling with that all along. A houseboat on Dale Hollow Lake. If any of you have ever been up this way, it's a beautiful lake. We've been told voted one of the most beautiful lakes in the country, and I can believe it. We've seen,
gorgeous. We're awesome. Close to Kentucky.
Yeah, we're right at the
Tennessee,
line.
But right at the line. I am drinking from a fantabulous Golden Girls mug
that we got out of the cabinets here. So sorry about that, Nick. We decided to take this
hashtag squad goals, and I can't argue that, right? And
you got all the ladies. You got Dorothy, you got Blanche, you got Rose, you got Sophia. So
amazing mug. And we're talking about conflict resolution, which we probably could do a whole podcast episode on how the Golden Girls get it wrong or get it right.
Most of the time.
But yeah, conflict resolution.
Yeah, and by the way, before we get too far, we've got these really awesome hats on.
Yeah, man.
TKM supported our Boathouse 5K, Freedom 5K, and so we get up here, and the guy who runs this or is a part of this company, I'm not exactly sure how all the leadership of that company works out, but we're staying in his houseboat. And he gave us these slick hats, so we thought we would point you guys that way.
So Ben is going to kind of present the do's of conflict resolution, and I'm going to present the don'ts of conflict resolution, and we're going to sound kind of like country music stars here on some of these, but nonetheless.
You might even sing for them.
I might even sing for them.
You never know. You never know when these things start. So the first one kind of seems like an odd one to throw out there. It's one of those that just seems like, hey, this should be just a no-brainer, right? But I don't think it is all the time.
Oh, no.
I think
not for me, for sure.
I think a lot of times we forget we need to pray first. Like if you're going to go talk to somebody, deal with a conflict at church, with your spouse, with your kids, with friends, neighbors, whatever it is, take it to the Lord in prayer. We sing that song a lot on Sundays. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you guys do, but take it to him first. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not somebody who prays, something like that kind of goes along with it would be, and I would encourage this for even somebody who does pray, is journal it, write it down, sound it out, getting it out to God, getting it out on paper too, are two really good, helpful things just to sort of know what you want to share.
Certainly for those who, sometimes we get caught up in I don't know how to pray.
Yeah.
Well, talk to God just like you would talk to someone else. I mean, the big thing is do it.
Yeah.
Get started. That's the thing, as my wife says, perfect practice makes perfect. But practice, just get going. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
to hear from you.
The other day, my son was praying, and you've probably experienced this with your kids, Travis, and I'm sure you guys out there have. And he was praying in the bed, and he was talking about, all of his friends, and he starts thanking God for all his friends, and then starts telling God how much he likes to play with his friend named Paxton, and starts telling him about how that they like to play these certain games and these are the things they do. And it turned from like, thank you and help me with this to, hey God, I just want to talk to you about what's going on with my buddies. And it was really cool because I was thinking, it does become conversational. It should become conversational when we talk to him. A lot of times we think, well, I pray when I got to take something to him that's really big and heavy and important, and I want something. And sometimes we just need to talk to him. So I think that's the first go-to. And I was thinking, Philippians 4:6-7 talks about don't be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God that surpasses all comprehension will guard your minds in Christ Jesus. So, it says right there, how much anxiety there is floating around conflict.
Well, and the amazing thing to me is there are Christians out there who think that prayer is kind of like doing nothing. That's
all
not
we've
being,
got left.
That's
to
not
do
being
is
active.
pray.
So it's the last thing we got to do, and I think that goes along with the first don't. Don't throw feathers in the wind. And I think that if you've been church very much,
country music.
Yes, it does.
I don't know that there is one, but it sounds like it.
The story that comes to mind is the gossip, the talking, and the guy finally, he's kind of convicted, and he goes to the preacher and says, "Hey, I've been gossiping, I've been saying all this stuff about people," and the preacher's like, "Well, you can get forgiveness, but you can't really reel all that in." And so he takes I think it's a pillow up to a window and like opens it up and lets the feathers go everywhere. And he's like, "This is
go gather them up. If you can gather up all those feathers, you can gather."
And we have this technological advancement called social media.
Advancement?
Yeah.
Is it advancement?
Well, the evolution or something. But people want to post all that stuff. And what's amazing to me is sometimes the people will post, kind of mocking prayer as, thoughts and prayers. What does that really accomplish? And I'm like, well, probably a lot more than your social media posts.
That's true. Yeah.
So don't go spreading feathers. Don't be throwing wet feathers in the wind. Be careful.
And, one of the things that I've often talked to couples about is don't go share, like, especially if they're having just really hardcore issues and, there's been things that have happened, maybe infidelity or whatever. If you ever think that there's a hope that you're going to keep things together, get things back together, and this really is just with friendships and everything, when you start sharing it, like with, married couples, they start sharing it with their parents or with brothers and sisters, you're going to get over it a whole lot quicker than they do. Oh, yeah. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to forgive him or I'm going to forgive her, then, you start working on it through therapy and through other things, and your parents and your brothers and sisters are probably not doing that. So there's going to be bigger issues later down the road because those feathers have been thrown into the wind, and there's no way to fix that.
There are times where people want to come to me, and it's not in the proper context. If people want to come to me and need help, but they want to come to me, and it's going to ruin my view of someone, and they're not really looking for a solution. They're just looking to gossip. Right. I've been known to stick my fingers in my ear and go, la, 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 la.
Yeah, that's probably not the great thing.
I don't want to know that. So there's another don't. But
it is. It's not. It is kind of a do that. Don't let people. If somebody's about to share something, go, hey, look, this isn't my business. And before you share it with me, I understand you're needing to vent. I'm a friend, but if this is going to cause some issues down the road, why don't you go share that with somebody, in a confidential scenario who's sort of separated from it together. Yep. So even though I might not lie in their face, I think saying, hey, I don't want to go there, So the second do, I guess, would be in conflict resolution that we would really encourage. And we talked about this a little bit tonight at the church that we were speaking at, is listen. Like, do listen. And a lot of times we want to talk over people. We want our part heard. We really push for our part to be heard. And it's great for us to be heard, but the first thing we need to do is listen. I can't really solve a problem. I can't fix a problem unless I really know what the problem is. So I can't really fix it anyway. But a lot of times we listen to judge. We listen to have a smart aleck comment back. We've
all the
done
time.
that all of our lives at each other. We listen to be able to reply back in some smart aleck way. Or to defend ourselves, we listen for little things that we can go, well, that's not exactly what it was, and we throw those out. And then the third thing we do is sometimes we just listen to, get our defense together. We're not really listening. We're trying to get our defense or we're trying to fix it. Like I'm trying to fix. So I'm thinking about when Travis is telling me about his problem, I start thinking about fixes before he really finishes talking, and I've missed part of it. So I think it's important for us to really listen, to just hear it. Like I want to hear what you have to say, not just, listen for a way to reply to you. So, James 1, everyone should be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. I think that's one that we certainly have to think about.
Even my 2 young ones, 6 and 5 years old, like, she's toppling me. That's their phrase for it. She's talking over me. You're not listening to me. She's not letting me talk, or he's not letting me talk. And so that's a big deal. And then number 2 on the don'ts is digging up bones. Digging up. You're supposed to do the backup.
Digging up
There we go.
bones.
All right. You don't keep a record, right? That's what love.
Right.
Love does not keep a record.
1 Corinthians 13. Yeah.
So,
I mean, the idea of don't sit there and dig up the past. If you said I forgave you, then just forgive. I mean, that's kind of, I know that's tough. I mean, the whole standard God sets up of forgive and forget is really tough for us to do as humans. So we do have a hard time forgetting, but try not to dig it up every single time, because every time you start, I think doesn't keep record of wrongdoing. There's different ways that 1 Corinthians 13:5 is translated, but wrong suffered. I'm not keeping up with the things that you did to me.
I'd say along with that, what heals you down, I know as a guy, I'd just rather I'd rather my wife just tell me if that's bothering her. Like, don't let it build up to the point that all of a sudden there's this explosion out of nowhere because you've been burying bones so that you can dig them up later. I'd much rather you'd be like, okay, that's annoying, stop, rather than, it's kind of like when you got something in your teeth and you're walking around with something in your teeth and you just wish somebody would have been like, hey man, you got something.
Would you tell me about that? Yeah. So I think digging up bones is certainly one. And then the third thing for the do's would be on the flip side of the listening is communicate assertively. Like tell each other what you need, but be careful how you do that. First of all, like I need something versus saying, well, Travis, you don't ever do this. Me saying, you don't ever do this. You always do this. You're always doing this. You're using those like big words like always and never, which are probably never good to use.
Yeah.
Sorry. I used them against themselves, but
never accurate.
They're never accurate, right? So, you don't want to use those kinds of words and those kinds of statements. You never take out the trash. You never do this. They're critical. They're criticisms rather than, I need you to do this, or I want you to do this because it would make me feel a certain way. And some of the people who've been to me and talked to me in premarital counseling are probably like, oh, I've heard that before. And that, a lot of them have come back and said, I remember you saying that. And I try to remember to do that, but that's a really hard phrase just to work into our vernacular. Is that the right word? Yeah. Nice. So, cool. When we start thinking about, things that we want to say, a lot of times we don't think about it in that way. But communicating assertively is me saying the things that I need to say and communicating what that means to me. Because if Travis knows that this is a need of mine, I think the relationship with Travis is strong enough that he would go, hey, I want to help meet that need. I want to do what, needs to be done in this scenario because, I know he loves me. I love him. We've been friends all of our lives. Same thing with my wife. I know she loves me and I love her. And then with our kids and with our neighbors and our friends. And it's like when we know that the person has a care for us, then when we come to him and says, this is what's lacking, this is what I need, and this is how it would make me feel for it to be fulfilled, that's a whole lot different than going, you don't ever do this, you don't ever do that. You've communicated in a way that is assertive, but it's also softer than coming to them and slapping them verbally around.
And I think that leads to number 3 of the don'ts, and that's don't break my heart, my achy breaky heart.
This is not number 3.
Just can't. Well, I mean,
That's
it kind of
not
plays
number
in.
3. Okay,
don't
maybe.
Don't
You
let
just
your
wanted-
emotions rule, right? Don't break my heart.
Well-
right? Don't say things and yell and scream.
Okay.
Keep yourself
Okay,
under control.
I'll
and don't
give you
break
that.
my heart.
I'll give you
My
that.
achy breaky heart. But
Well, good land. We went there with
We
Billy
did.
Ray Cyrus. That's old school.
Mhm.
But yes, I think you're right though. Don't let those emotions play a part in it, because when we start letting emotions really rule the day, they will really mess up the day. We don't think clearly when we're emotional. Our emotional brain and our intellectual brain, right brain, left brain, whatever you want to call it, they do not play well together. And so as I get emotional, I don't think well.
That includes being hangry, right?
Yes, there's a sign over there that talks about
Hangry.
anger, and it gives us the definition. But you've coached football for a while, right? And you know as well as I do that towards the end of a football game, or even in the middle of a football game, there's times where the fans and the coaches are going, what were you thinking?
Yeah. You
And
get tired. You get tired and you go back to undisciplined. And that's all kinds of levels. You look at Christianity, right? Even the first century, the temptation was to go back to Judaism.
Yeah.
They kind of got
That's
a
what they
pass. They
used.
had this ability to worship Yahweh or worship God. And so it was really a temptation for early Christians to go, well, let's just go back to Judaism. And so a lot of the scriptures warn against, hey, don't go back to the law. There's no freedom there. And so all kinds of levels of not letting your emotions rule, right?
Yeah, and when you think about that as well, with the emotions, we've talked about HALT, SB, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed, bored. Those are a pretty good knowledge. That when those things are happening, you're at your weakest point. And so when I go to talk to you about something, if I'm hungry or you're hungry, I'm angry, you're angry, I'm lonely, you're lonely, tired, bored, stressed, those things are a part of it. We automatically know we're coming in and the emotional level could get higher. So pick a better time. I've had couples tell me, well, we argued till 2:00 in the morning. And I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. And they're like, well, the Bible says, don't let the sun go down in your wrath. I said, the sun went down like 4 hours ago. So stop arguing and go to bed and wake up the next morning and make that the next day's goal. But you can't really argue well when you're emotional. So if you're tired and you're hungry and you're lonely, you're angry, you're tired, bored, stressed, if any of those things are present, probably not a great time. Find a good time. Talk about a good time. Hey, we're going to sit down at breakfast in the morning. We're going to sit down at supper. We're going to, find a time to resolve these conflicts. Then you can, do that better. And I think something that you mentioned earlier too in our discussion before we got live was watch your body language. Yeah. Like, when we're emotional, sometimes we're communicating things non-verbally that we don't really maybe mean to communicate. So those are the do's and don'ts
of
conflict resolution.
Do's of conflict resolution and don'ts of country music.
That's true.
Other than Randy Travis, you should totally go with some Randy Travis.
So if you want to review, number 1, here are the 3 conflict resolution do's: pray, listen, communicate assertively.
Conflict resolution don'ts.
Go for it.
Don't break my heart, my achy breaky heart.
You're killing me.
Don't let emotions rule. Don't dig up bones. And don't throw feathers in the wind.
And there you have it. Ben and Travis conflict resolution.
Straight from a
do's and don'ts.
houseboat.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.